Welcome to the Birthing Conscious Humans podcast. And this morning I am joined by Dona Tumacder-Esteban from the Philippines, who is herself a mother, a women's cycle awareness educator, and she's also an energy management consultant for the corporate world in Southeast Asia. Wow. Now, I've met Dona in Corfu a few times and we've had some juicy conversations. But when I personally realized that this whole pandemic situation was going to be locking people in houses for a while, the running joke as a doula was, oh my God, there's going to be a lot of babies being conceived because people have the time. But at the same time, something really kicked in for the first time almost, like, what if this global situation is asking people to seriously consider, is it a good time to be conceiving a baby? And the repercussions of the bigger picture. So at the same time, I was spending more time online, and I saw an amazing interview with Dona herself talking about her expertise, which is the women's cycle. And Dona was explaining it so eloquently and in so much detail that in the moment of conceiving, I thought, oh my God, conscious conception. And so I got in touch with Dona, and here we are. Thank you, Dona, so much for saying yes to this conversation. And welcome.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you for listening to that intuition, from your womb. And I just got goosebumps again, just hearing you say that story just gave me goosebumps. And I take that as a big yes, a big yes.
Beautiful. So, yeah, it's, a lot of these questions have existed for me for a while now, especially looking at birth from a baby's perspective. But I think the global situation in the time being has sort of made some of these questions more immediate and more urgent. And I see a lot more people kind of looking into conscious conception from all sorts of perspectives. So, Dona, I wanted to just sort of dip into your expertise a little bit so people can kind of get a picture of where you're coming from. So I really love the way you're talking about cycle awareness rather than sort of period or menstrual. There's something a bit more cosmic from my perspective when we're looking at cycles.
Yeah, well, I used to actually just focus on the period, to tell you the truth. Yeah. And because the period is something that we see, it's obvious, it really screams out loud for some people. Yeah. At the very least, we see something coming out of us. Yeah, so there is a tendency to kind of just look at the period, and even on the period apps, for example, if you are tracking your cycle, in my experience, doing this for about 8 years now, most women would track their start date and end date, and that's it. Yeah. But then I realized that, something there was a missing piece. Yeah. And I realized that the missing piece was so much bigger than the piece that I was actually focusing on. Yeah. Because we are going through a cycle. Yeah. Yeah. And the period, our blood phase, is just part of that cycle. Yeah, absolutely. That is the part that speaks the loudest. Yeah. Yeah. But there are other phases of the cycle, and my background when it comes to cycle awareness really started with an understanding of the cycle from Chinese medicine, from a Chinese medicine perspective, wherein we really look at all these phases and our energy in the different phases, the things that we do in all phases ultimately affect our experience of our period. Yeah. So that was what opened me up more. Yeah. And then this big piece suddenly started shining with bright
emitting
lights. The big piece, yeah, the big piece on ovulation. Wow, at some point I realized, wait a minute, ovulation is like the main event of the cycle when you think about it. But it's very subtle because we don't see it. Some people are sensitive enough, especially if you've been doing cycle tracking for a long time, we become sensitive enough to feel ovulation. Yeah. But it's not like the period where you can see it clearly. Yeah? And so I started really focusing on my own research and my own studies and my own, my body is my lab. So I started focusing on tracking my ovulation as well. That's why it's funny, because the first thing I touch in the morning, is actually my thermometer.
Wow. Okay, talk about precision.
Yeah, that's the first thing I touch, because part of cycle awareness is really tracking your basal body temperature to know if you have ovulated. And of course that information combined with looking at our cervical mucus then can give us a better gauge if we are ovulating. So another big piece was the realization that we do have a larger cycle, which I call the feminine energy cycles. Because you see, in Chinese medicine, for example, women go through 7-year cycles. So 0 to 7, 7 to 14. Ideally, I mean, from that perspective, you get your first bleed at 14. Although, of course, now with environmental factors and stressors and all that, a lot of children are getting it much earlier. Much earlier. And so I started looking at these cycles and understanding it based also on my experience and the experience of women in the circles that I have. And this larger cycle begins, when you think about it, at birth. And now talking to you, I'm also realizing, and thank you so much for bringing this to my attention, that there is even the pre-birth, which is really conception.
Absolutely.
To the point of birth. So then from birth, then we go through our girlhood, and then we are initiated into our menstruating years. And at some point, go ahead.
Just hearing you, how that initial kind of period, the scene part, and you unfolded it and internalized it into a much bigger cycle. So we're going from the scene to the internalized. And it's a little bit why I wanted this to be a podcast, so people listen in. It's that kind of internal process that goes on rather than looking for something on the outside. And again, many women were coming with the fear of, I'm going to give birth and there's going to be X, Y, Z, and I don't know if my partner's going to be there, or under normal circumstances, I don't know if I'm going to get my water birth, and everything is so focused on the birth part, which is the scene part. And it's like, you've got at least 9 months of preparation. And even before you conceive, you've got at least 3 months to prepare. Look, all of a sudden, how the cycle just became so much bigger, and how much more time we give ourselves for the final being seen moment. So it's kind of, going into that big word of conscious and making conscious.
I love how you summarized all of that, because it is true. There is so much going on. That's why when people ask me if I do prenatal yoga or postnatal, I say, I can, but I focus on antenatal, which is preconception even, preparing the body. Because we need to understand these feminine energy cycles. Because after it, so you have your menstruating years, and then you get initiated into menopause, which is a whole different story. And this is and then of course there's death, right? So this is the larger cycle that we are in. And during that menstruating years, that is the period, pun intended, that's the period, that's the part of our lives when we can actually choose to be a mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not everybody chooses that. Yeah. And so I just wanna presence that this is the time of a different kind of creativity. Yeah. So we are procreative, okay? We are procreative. And also, if you choose not to be a mother, okay, this fertility in our womb can now be expressed in creative projects, in mothering communities, in mothering projects, in mothering siblings. Yeah. So there is, for me, it's very, very important that we prepare for this. And for us to prepare for this, we need to learn about our cycles. We need to become aware of this very important aspect of us being a woman. Now, whether or not you choose to conceive.
Or not, absolutely. And this is, you've said two really important words that for me home into this whole idea of conscious anything, because conscious has become quite a big buzzword in the, I want to sort of clarify it a little bit so people don't suddenly start to develop yet another anxiety of having a conscious conception or not. Like, what do we mean by conscious? And one is self-awareness, the work involved in self-awareness, choice, which brings a kind of sense of empowerment. I've chosen this. Life didn't just happen to me. Yeah, I've chosen and I'm part of that choice. And the third is preparing. It's not a press the app ready made. It's putting the effort in preparing for something. And as well as the work, it brings a pleasure and a sort of active contribution to creating your life how you want it. So those are three elements that are really fundamental to anything becoming conscious, I believe.
And when giving birth to a human being, we have to also realize that we are part of the process of the creation of another being's life. Yeah. And how we welcome this human being into the world can have an impact. Yeah. It can have an impact on the child or on this being, as she grows and matures. There is an impact there. Our preparation is very, very important.
So it was a little bit the idea, so sort of flipping it over to baby's perspective. So the moment of choosing, a woman chooses to conceive, she's not the only participant in that choice. So perhaps there's a partner, and there's certainly a soul in that moment saying yes to life. And if we kind of relate to the vibrational nature of our existence, in that everything on some level is interconnected, when a woman or a couple have prepared, it's sending the message, I'm expecting you. I want you. We're here for you. So just putting ourselves in that, from that baby incoming soul perspective, it's like, I'm wanted here. I'm ready to be received. And I also tune into a sense of stability, at least. I mean, I don't know if anything ever turns out how we want it to, but there is, in this unstable times, by being conscious and aware of our cycle and where we're at and choosing to conceive, it brings, for me at least, a sense of stability.
Yes, a sense of security. There is that. Very first chakra when we think about it. There is that sense of belonging as well. Because we are indeed welcoming a new soul. And I really love how you mentioned that there are various participants. There's a variety of participants. In my practice, when somebody comes to me for fertility, I often, of course, I listen very deeply. I mean, I listen to their story, and there are many stories, many reasons why they want to have a child, and all of that. And at the same time, I also tune in to what is not being spoken.
Absolutely.
You know, to what is in their environment. And I remember, without naming names, like usually, like when I see a person who wishes to conceive, and they tell me their stories, eventually, you know, I find out more than what they are just saying, and I put myself. It's really interesting that you are looking at conception from the perspective of the baby, because one of the things that I ask myself is, if I were a baby, would I want to be born in this circumstance at this moment? And wow, you know what? It's really quite interesting, the answers that I get, because I remember having a client who, like, the moment I walked in her house did not scream baby. Everything was sharp edges. You know, everything was metal. You know, that kind of very cold. A beautiful house, but it definitely did not scream baby. There's also an instance wherein the reason the woman wanted to have a baby was because her husband's family suffered great loss, and she felt that maybe if she gets pregnant, that would bring back some joy. And I'm not saying that these are not valid reasons. You know, we all have our reasons, and some even happen unexpectedly, right? Just being able to realize that and say, oh, okay, this is part of the process. Maybe I am projecting something and wanting something different. I have my own agenda. And you know how it is when we give birth to a human being, they are fully themselves, and at the same time in the process of becoming. I love that idea that we are both beings and becoming. We are full and whole, and at the same time, we are in the process of becoming. So the clearer we are about our own agenda, our own cravings, our own desires, the more we can how do I put this? The more we can be clear about what we are imposing on the soul that we are welcoming.
Exactly. And then
it becomes a conversation.
Exactly, spot on. And then it becomes a conversation, and it's also going back to, at the beginning, there was more than just I. There was soul coming in and partner. So it's sort of saying, by owning up to my stuff and making as much of my needs aware, I'm also allowing you to be more of who you are. And this is, for me, crucial at this point in time, that we clear the field, the individual family field, the collective field, so that the babies that are coming through have as less baggage projected onto them as possible, so that their unique wisdom, intelligence, advanced intelligences from our perspective, for me is what gives me hope for change, and for them leading the way into something that perhaps we are not even aware of at the time being. And the less they sort of come in and have to deal with our unclaimed family ancestral stuff. And for sure, I've seen that happening. It's already been happening. And I think when people listen in also to Aldebaran's baby birth chart, she's also mentioning how things are changing. They're becoming lighter. The field is becoming lighter for babies. I just think this is a time to really talk about it. And I do think that women genuinely want the best for their babies. Parents genuinely want the best for their... So this isn't about becoming the perfect parent or the ideal parent, right? And I think what you're saying, making the unconscious conscious, which isn't often comfortable. Yeah, it does involve kind of owning up to the sadness of having lost a child already, or the kind of hormonal urge, the desperation of wanting a baby, no matter what. It's
because it's time.
Because it's time. Because it's time, and then we're sort of reaching another layer in this. Babies arriving because families, societies, cultural, I won't say impositions, that's hard, but yeah, society says it's time to have a baby, let's say. Work says, no, I can't have a baby now, let's have time, let's have baby later, for example. What about baby's time? What about allowing the time for baby to come in, how she chooses to come in? And this brings me back to the idea of cycles, and sort of when a woman is tuned into her cycle, right? For me, feeling into your work, it says, okay, so Dona is supporting women to tune into her cycle. When a woman chooses into her cycle, she's more aware of her being part of something bigger. So a natural cycle. When we're in tune to a natural cycle, there's something that kind of reverberates across nature, across the universe, that says, doo-doom, doo-doom, there's a pulsating ripple effect that says, I'm ripe, I'm ready. So this is how kind of their cycle of the natural cycle, and baby kind of picking up on, oh, there's a juicy cycle there, ready for me to slip into that. That's kind of, if I put a picture in what you were saying. So I think it's fundamental work that you're doing in preparing women in this way.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps again because I'm learning so much just listening to you, because usually like the work that I do is really from the perspective of our womb.
Yeah.
And here you are sharing with me this beautiful perspective from the baby, and also the choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I love that. And I just want to also bring up the fact that, okay, I mean, we are thinking about conscious conception and preparing ourselves and all of that. And what about all these unexpected babies? What about, I live in the Philippines with 100 million plus population.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty sure not all of these babies being born here are done, with that much awareness. You know what I mean? So also, I just want to presence that there is a mystery.
Yeah.
There is a deep mystery in life. Yeah. How and why we choose what we choose. Yeah. Where we are born, in what circumstance we are conceived, because not all babies are conceived in love, in loving environments. Yeah. But I do believe that there is always love. There is always love involved somewhere, even if it is distorted. Yeah. And so I just want to bring that up. I just want to presence that because I, of course, for all the listeners, we are very, very privileged to actually be talking about this right now.
We are privileged to be talking about this right now. And
yeah,
we're sort of in a... So you're a mom, right? You have a beautiful daughter. And I think that the question I most often get asked, especially as a doula, so if I'm going to work with a client or not, is, do you have children? That kind of almost automatically makes me legitimate to work with children. If she's got children, it's okay. So a little bit about my story, how I sort of came into becoming conscious of my own birth journey because of losing my, sort of being a twin, conceived as a twin, but not being born as a twin. I'm mentioning this because when we start seeing birth from a baby's perspective, it kind of almost, there's a finiteness to how much we can prepare or how much we become conscious of, because no matter how much we love or we try to love or how much consciousness work we do, baby will always receive the information how he needs to for her own soul development.
Yes.
So there, in essence, even from conception, they've got their own sovereign space, their own sovereign intelligence that coexists with ours, and they've come here to develop their body. So sort of this embodiment of whatever someone wants to call it, kind of spirit, soul, energy, is the relationship between their spirit and their body and the awareness that exists in between. And no matter how much a mother or a father loves, there are those moments that there is a lack of awareness because of work, because of exhaustion, because of just not being able to in that moment. And trauma, another huge word there, is not because somebody wanted to do something bad to us. You know, they wanted to harm their baby. But it's in that moment of rush or absence of presence that baby can so easily feel neglected, scared. This was part of my journey, realizing how fear. Am I being born? Am I going to live or am I going to die? Angry and sad at losing my twin heart. It was already there when I was born. Yeah. So I'm just saying this so Mama doesn't take on this huge burden of responsibility, that she's the sole responsible creator of another being human's life. You know, there's...
Yeah, thank you for really presencing that, because it is a co-creative process. Yeah, it is a co-creative process. And as parents, as a mother, you know, I speak for myself when I say that what is within my responsibility. Okay, there are certain things that are definitely not under my control. Even the consciousness of my partner is not under my control. Yeah. But what is within my responsibility is preparing, welcoming. Yeah, absolutely. Preparing my body for this, preparing my relationships with this. And that's why when it comes to conscious conception, this is, again, like what you said, this is not another standard to live up to. This is not another thing that we need to measure ourselves against. We already do that to ourselves a lot. But what conscious conception is for me is really being conscious as me, first and foremost. It starts with my own consciousness. Yeah. The inner work that I have done to make myself aware of who I am, of my own body, of my own rhythms. Yeah. And through that, because of my own awareness, then I can become, I can really practice my sovereignty in making choices about partners, and making choices about food, and making choices about when, where, what, how. Yeah. But it always starts with us. Yeah. That is, for me, what conscious conception is all about. Yeah. It's not being conscious because I want to conceive now. Therefore, okay, let's do this now. It's conceiving when we are in a certain state of consciousness. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I mean? Absolutely. For me, it's very, very important to really see that our own consciousness at the time of conceiving becomes the seed. Okay, let me go back to what I've learned in Chinese medicine, and I'm going to be saying this very, very loosely, translating this very loosely. Basically, the essence of the mother and the father at that point of conception becomes the seed essence of the child. Yeah? And so our gift to our baby is our own essence. And that essence, okay, to put it in practical terms, this would be our chi, okay, our jing, okay, which is affected by our lifestyle, our food, our state of mind, our emotional state at that time of conception, by the environment at that time of conception. All of these now come together to be to be the gift, the blessing that we give to the child at that point of birth. And so this whole idea really revolutionized my way of thinking when it comes to fertility. What is my energy like at that point of conception? What is my partner's energy like?
And this is beautiful what you're saying, Donna, like feeling into your description. This summer in Corfu, where I'm living very much within a natural environment, we've had at least 3 couples coming to prepare, to juicing up, to attune with a natural cycle, already conceived, and they knew the day, the time, the place they had conceived because they had prepared. And that I mean, if nothing else, it just adds beauty, it just adds ceremony, it just adds kind of creation to the vibration to the whole process. Is what things can you do? And this becomes the birth timeline. Remember, on that day we did this, on this day we did our yes ceremony, where we both loud and clear, yes, you are welcome, yes, we want you, yes, please stay in this beautiful vessel that we've prepared for you. And that creates just a beautiful life path that then baby, you know, when it's old enough, he or she's old enough to understand, mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad can say, hey, this is what happened when we found out. This is what happened when, you know, we found out you were a boy or a girl, you know, all this. And we haven't even got to birth yet.
It's so juicy because I tell you, you know, my own conception, I mean, my daughter's conception.
Yes, daughter's conception, yeah.
Yeah, it was fabulous because, you know, I knew that I didn't want to have a baby immediately. Yeah. So, you know, it was like, it took us time, you know, I took my time. Okay. And I really had no, you know, I knew I wanted to have a baby eventually. But I remember that moment when suddenly I felt it. And it was like, you know, overnight. You know, one day I wasn't ready. And then the next day I was like, come on, let's do it now. You know, I'm ready. It's now. The time is now.
The calling,
and I felt it with every cell of my body, in every cell of my body. I knew. And immediately, at that time, I wasn't really into cycle awareness yet. You know, my daughter is 12 now. But there was something in me that knew, okay, it's time to prepare. So first thing I did when I got the feeling, and I remember because I was in the United States at that time attending the wedding of my cousin. And I came home saying, okay, now let's schedule an appointment with the OB. I need to look for an OB who would be willing to hold me in a more holistic way. And it was just so, you know, it was such an overwhelming feeling. And when I say overwhelming, it was joyful, okay? Of knowing like it's now and I have to prepare for it. So you know, we saw an OB and did everything, prepared my body for the possible pregnancy. And I have very funny stories. Like she gave me these beads, these rhythm cycle beads, and you know, so I had to like put like the rubber ring, you know, transfer it every day. You know, at that time there were no apps, so I would do that every day. And then one night I said, oh my God, you know, it's time. I think it's time. And then I turned off the light and I didn't realize that the ovulation portion of those beads were glow in the dark. So I was there hanging with like glow in the dark saying, it's time, you know.
Wow.
And then that's on one side, okay. And it's so nice because when I decided, okay, when I felt the call, like, okay, it's time, suddenly, like, women were giving me little gifts without them knowing where I was at. Like, an aunt of mine gave me a statue of the Lady of Fatima.
Wow.
And she said, this is so that you can pray to her and all of that. So I just put the statue of the Lady of Fatima in my room, you know. And so on one side, I had these like these rhythmic beads saying, you're ovulating. And then on the other side, I had that statue and it was also glow in the dark.
It's like you had a glow in the dark conception.
And it was like, okay, this is really very strange. I don't know if I can do it with the Virgin watching me. But you know what? That wasn't the time that we conceived. Okay. Yeah. But already there was a tuning into it.
Yeah, I hear you.
There was a tuning into it. The actual conception happened in an island with 7 volcanoes.
Yeah.
You know, and this island is called Camiguin. Mm-hmm. And so the running joke is that, you know, in Camiguin, you come and come again.
And you so a fertile start.
A very, very fertile start. But so it was very interesting because you're right. These stories, when I tell them to Carmen, she knows, she feels that we were expecting her, that she was welcome, always welcome. And my body was strong at that time, you know. So I knew that, you know, later on in hindsight, after, you know, when I was already beginning to really dive deep into cycle awareness, I knew that I was giving her the blessing of good essence. Yeah, of Absolutely. Good energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, between my partner and I, we knew, you know, intuitively that we had to be ready. And it's such a beautiful experience.
Beautiful, Dona. And this is, you know, it's in very simple words, you know, when you walk into a room or a group of people and somebody there even remembers your name and welcomes you and say, hey, Sophia, when they've only just met you, it's like there's something that, oh, wow, I'm being remembered. So, yeah, when you arrive and there's more fullness, there's more essence there. There's a deeper sense of belonging, a deeper sense of wanting to be part of this life and feeling connected to life on earth. Yeah. And so that it feels home no matter the circumstances, in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. And that sense of safety in my body. I'm entering a body that feels safe because I'm feeling seen, heard, welcomed, acknowledged as soon or even prepared for. And that adds, you know, that, time, breath, vibration, essence. And I think when we start, I think this conversation really makes sense when we approach it from this sort of perspective and awareness, for sure.
Now, how do we now ground this into something that we can do as women to prepare ourselves? Well, this is very important for me to say that fertility is not just about reproduction. Yeah. Fertility is truly a marker for well-being. That one I really want to emphasize because a lot of people only think about their cycle health and fertility when they want to have a baby. Yeah. In fact, when we don't want to have a baby, you know, we only think about it so that we make sure that we are not conceiving.
And that's another one of those big stories that aren't often told. You know, the unseen part, the shadow part, I'm using my cycle because in fact, subconsciously, I don't want to conceive. I don't want to have a baby.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
And that's okay too. That's okay too. So this whole idea of cycle awareness is not just for having babies.
Yeah.
It's really for our health. It's for the health of our, because, when we ovulate, then we have a bigger chance of producing the proper amounts of progesterone that our bodies actually need. Yeah? And progesterone is very good for our heart health, for our brain health, for our bone health, for our breast health. So it's not just about, being able to keep a baby, for implantation to happen, for pregnancy to happen. No. And it is only when we are ovulating that we can produce the proper amounts of progesterone. Yeah? Of course, given that the body is healthy, there are other structural issues that might come up. But for most
absolutely,
of us,
and I'll interrupt you there, Donna, because so many women that I know that are saying, I'm doing everything I can to conceive. I'm not smoking, I'm exercising, I've got the best health, and yet it's not working. So how can I look at the multi-dimensional layers that being born consists of? And it's sort of birth and the birth journey, conception kind of brings all these elements, all these dimensions into a single moment of kind of a sacred passage where we need to look at the body on a physiological level. And Colleen Grasnick is also who's a naturopath, is also going to be talking about the vessel from a kind of nutrition, preparing a healthy vessel point of view. Emotional well-being, awareness, consciousness, spiritual, energetic, breath well-being, and and flow, and our ability to flow or not flow.
And imagine that you have the opportunity to do that every month. That kind of awareness, physiological, mental, emotional, spiritual. We have the opportunity when we begin to mind our flow.
And Donna, could just bring kind of this cycle of conversation to sort of slowly to a close for today. Many women around the world sort of still perhaps being in lockdown, or like, what can as a woman, as the I, owning up to either fertility or just healthy well-being, what can we do today in this moment, no matter what the circumstances are? Like, what's your number one?
Buy a thermometer.
Yeah.
No, seriously, right now, and I will say this, I have had a lot of women contact me, telling me that their cycles are going haywire, like delayed, early, etc., etc.
Stress, fear, etc. Yeah.
Yes, and my answer is observe.
Yeah.
Observe now, and for the next at least for 4 months, because that's when we get to see
the pattern,
some sort of pattern. Yeah, because it's all about pattern. Being cyclical beings, there is a rhythm to it. Yeah, and a cycle is something that is consistent, regular, and predictable when you think about it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when there is an imbalance, we lose either the consistency, the regularity, or the predictability of it.
Yeah.
And there are many, many things that can affect our cycle, particularly our lifestyle, what we eat, how we move, the people we engage with. Whether we are moving houses, changing careers, breaking up with somebody, hooking up with somebody new, all of these affect our well-being, our cycle well-being. Yeah. So in the context of what is going on in the world now with the pandemic, of course that will affect our cycles. Yeah. And so this pandemic has also given us the gift of becoming aware of our cycles. I am so blown away by that.
Yeah.
Because now women are beginning to take notice. There's no distraction from it.
Yeah.
Now they know, oh, shucks, I'm late, I'm not late, I'm early, I haven't gotten my period in 2 months. And so we are given this gift of time and space and energy to look at our cycles.
Beautiful.
And to track our cycles, which is really, really our first step. Before we even try to make judgments, there is an archetypal cycle, an ideal cycle when our body is in harmony. At the same time, I really don't want that to be another standard, another measure for perfection for us women. Yeah. So for me, the first thing, the most immediate thing that we can do right now is to track our own experience of the cycle. And not just the start date and the end date of the period. Yeah. And not just looking at your cycle and say, oh, look, it's my ovulation phase. Because truth be told, apps have algorithms to predict it, right? But there are so many things that affect our ovulation. So if you're really trying to conceive, the best way is for you to take your basal body temperature, to also look at your mucus, and the height of your cervix. But at least 2 out of these 3. So I use the mucus and the thermometer and my temperature a lot, because while we cannot really predict ovulation, like the day of ovulation per se, we can confirm it on hindsight. If our body temperature is higher for 3 days straight, then it could be possible that you ovulated on 3 days earlier, and that you would get your period 12 to 15 days after. I mean, our body is just so amazing.
Incredible.
But we need to become aware of it. Make it part of your mindfulness practice. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about conscious conception. The menstrual cycle awareness is a mindfulness practice for me.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It is a portal to getting to know ourselves better on all levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Yeah. And this is why I say, consciousness it's a very personal thing, so that when we are ready for conception, automatically it's a conscious conception when you think about it, because we have been working on our own consciousness. And of course, through that cycle awareness, once you have a semblance, or once you recognize certain patterns that you have, then we can take a look at it. What has been happening in your life? Are there big things or small things? Is there low-grade anxiety going on? What is your period telling you? The blood that comes out of us, it's a language. Our experiences around our blood phase and during premenstruum, that's your body's way of talking to you. And I'm just an interpreter. I help people make sense of it until you can make sense of it yourself.
Beautiful, Dona. Beautiful, beautiful work. And this interpreting and supporting women interpret almost like these cycles moving through us. Because, we're talking about it on a physiological level, emotional, spiritual, but like the word I used at the very beginning, so why did I use that word? Cosmic energy moves in cycles and rhythms and in patterns, and how we are open to be in tune with them. We become in tune with kind of the whole universe to receive whatever wants to be received in this time, including babies and children.
I have this one last beautiful story of a woman who felt the call. She doesn't have a partner. And yet she felt the call. And she came to me because already she had planned for her IVF. She found a friend who would be the donor and all of that. And then she decided that it was time for her to prepare her body. And it was such a, I feel so blessed to be part of that process, because for me, that was such a prime example of being able to conceive consciously, maybe not in the most natural way, but her consciousness was there. Her consciousness was there. And now she's a mother, to a beautiful, beautiful baby. And her consciousness, for me, it was really the ground for it. The ground to welcome. So like what you said, there's so many layers to it. And again, I'm going to bring back mystery. Absolutely. Because there is still going to be a part,
thank you, Dona,
of this whole creation that will be in this beautiful unknown.
Allows for the mystery of life. Absolutely.
Yes, and we also have to make space for that. We have to make space for that. Mystery is part of the conception process.
Absolutely. To which I bow.
Yes, me too.
Dona, it's been a beautiful conversation. I don't want to put too many words on it. I'm just going to keep it in my heart. I'm assuming people can get hold of you online for advice and support. I'll write your details down also at the end of the podcast so people can kind of get in touch via email. I do have, on my Instagram, I have a lot of prompts that people can look at when they begin to track their cycle. Because we're not only tracking the physical, we need to track also our mental and emotional states. So that's available on Instagram at Inner Moon Wellbeing for those who want to get started right now. Dona, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening in.